Thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone for joining us. Um, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to be covering the eCompensation, the PeopleSoft eCompensation, often called the comp cycle process today. And we're going to dive a little deeper kind of into some of the configuration that you need to do in setting up the compensation cycle. So hopefully you'll see, if you've seen a presentation on this functionality before, hopefully you'll see a little deeper dive with this presentation. So our agenda is we'll have an introduction to our topic. We'll have a demonstration of the functionality where we'll kind of be touching upon how comp cycles can be structured, whether you're going to want something that's centrally managed or rolling it out to managers for planning. We'll be looking at integrating with performance systems. So if you need to base increases off of performance ratings, how would you accomplish that? Utilizing a merit matrix to drive your increases. And we'll take a look at, there's several different dimensions that you can define with that. So we'll take a look at that. We'll also touch on managing bonus payments within the cycle. It does have the capability to include bonus payments in your planning. So we'll touch lightly on that one. It utilizes variable comp, which is another kind of whole aspect of compensation within PeopleSoft. So that could be a whole nother presentation, but we'll look at the relevant parts for what we need for comp cycle. And then we'll look at setting up your planning page, how you would go about configuring what the managers would see. And so then finally we'll have a summary and some common customizations, things I've seen different customers do with the compensation cycle. And finally hopefully have time for some questions and answers at the end. So eCompensation is a tool provided by PeopleSoft that supports the planning of base pay increases and bonus payments. It allows your compensation administrator to configure and tailor the cycle as they need to, depending on what all is going to be involved in that particular cycle. It's most commonly used for like annual increases, but in reality, you can leverage it for other increases that you might need to do to specific populations. So it's pretty flexible in that regard. And it does leverage manager self-service to allow your managers to review, update as if needed, and approve any recommended increases. So with our demo, we're going to be looking at the manage transactions page and the allocate compensation page. They're pretty much very similar views of the compensation cycle. One is for the compensation administrator, the other is what managers see. And so when we go through that, we'll see that it's hierarchically driven. It has organization and direct report totals, provides tabs for being able to do planning for base pay as well as bonus payments, and has performance ratings integration there's an individual page where you can see more details about the particular individual, and there's built-in analytics. And so we'll touch upon all those topics as we get into that page. But basically, it's very similar view that both the compensation administrator and the manager sees when looking at planning for a cycle. And so we'll also be digging into compensation cycle prerequisites. So basically, what's our population? What's our organization? Are we needing to include performance ratings in this cycle? And if so, where are we going to get those from? Leveraging a merit matrix, which utilizes PeopleSoft's configurable matrices capabilities. We'll take a look at that. And we'll briefly touch upon bonus plan setup in terms of how it, defining a bonus plan at kind of a high level that would be included in a compensation cycle for plan. And so with that, let me see about get us logged into the system here and bring that across. Okay, can everybody see the PeopleSoft page now?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we are on manager self-service. We're going to start at the end. So we're going to start with the end result of what your managers would see if they were doing planning. Because I think that'll give us, we can talk through the different things there. And then as we go through and start talking about configuration, we'll be able to tie that back to kind of what we were seeing on the planning page. So allocate compensation is the page that the manager sees. Now, keep in mind, this is the demo environment. And so you're going to see a lot out here. Your manager would only see like 1 or 2 cycles that they were planning for. Betty Lockerty, on the other hand, is a very busy person here in the demo environment. So we see a lot of different rows here. But the cycle that I've set up for us to look at is this fiscal year 2024 cycle. And so we're going to go into this cycle here, where Betty is the top level manager for this particular cycle. And so basically we see here that we've got, we're in this Betty, we can see some organizational totals here. We can see totals for Betty's direct reports. Here's the actual planning for Betty's direct reports where we could make changes. So if, for example, I wanted to say, hey, I really want to bump Alex's increase up. So I'm going to make Alex's increase 3%. Then I can see that that then it calculates that and updates my totals, and we can now see, hey, because of that, we're a little over budget, and maybe that's okay, or maybe we need to figure out where we're going to trim to bring ourselves back in line with the budget. So in our totals, we see the number of eligible employees. For our demonstration here, I specifically set up where the bonus was only eligible for a subset of the population, just so we could see what happens when you don't have a complete one-to-one alignment on this. And so, but we see the eligible employees, we see the eligible salaries, the total funded amount, which is the total funded amount, is the amount that was calculated based on, in the case of merit, was calculated based on the merit matrix, utilizing the person's performance rating and their position and range or percent range. And in the case of bonus is basically the bonus had a specific percentage fund for it, as did the equity. So we'll take a look at those, but we see the funded amount, then what our proposals are, and then what the balance is. So as we can see, you know, we've got equity money here to spend, and as because of the change I just made, we're a little over as far as our spend on the merit. So we see the planning for the direct reports. We scroll over a little bit, we can see we've got the performance ratings showing up for folks because we've integrated performance ratings into this cycle. And we've got these tabs here where we can, you know, right now we're looking at merit increase. We could go to the equity adjustments, and then we can see basically we could propose a particular amount for an equity adjustment. Let's suppose we wanted to say, okay, we're going to give $700 increase, and it calculates out for us at the 1.6%. And then we see that our up here in our totals, total proposed amount $700. We still have 2,000 left for any equity adjustments that we want to do. And we can also go to the bonus tab, where we'll see, and this is an example of, you know, not everybody that is eligible for a merit increase, you know, or an equity increase is eligible for our bonus. And so we see people that are not eligible are marked as excluded, and we can't update their amounts. Okay. And the other thing we see then is indirect reports. So, you know, these are the three people who report directly to Betty, but she also has Rosanna Channing is a manager that reports to Betty that has population. Okay. You'll also notice there's this comp admin group. The comp admin group is kind of a default group, so that if there is someone in my population that I can't figure out where they go in the hierarchical structure, they get placed in the comp admin group. So a lot of times you'll you know, create your cycle and you'll look at the comp admin group and you'll go, oh, why do I have 500 people in my, you know, comp admin group? Well, it turns out that, you know, there's a broken reports to relationship somewhere that that you need to correct, so that people are lined up properly to the where they report in the organization. So that's kind of a default group. We'll talk a little bit about how that can be used to our advantage if we are wanting to do a depending on the size of our population and if we're wanting it to be centrally managed, we might be fine with just everybody landing in that account admin. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing that I want to point out is the analytics. So there are built-in analytics that you can define and customize, but there are a couple that are built in, such as here salary analysis. We see each of the people in our cycle and what their current salary is. If we want to switch to something more pertinent to our planning, we can see what their proposed increases look like. And we can see that, we've got Christelle receiving a 3% increase. We don't have anything for David or so those may be things that we want to look at. So. Couple other things we want to look at while we're here. One is the individual page. So if I click on a person, I'm taken to their individual page where I see a little different view. I can see some, we can configure this individual page with some additional detail information if we want to. And we see kind of all of their pieces here together, the two salary plans and the bonus plan all together there. And the other thing that I wanted to show is that we can drill down. Before we drill down, I want to show that you'll notice that there's a submit and a pushback button, and both of those are grayed out. And so why they are grayed out is because the comp cycle is set up where it's very hierarchical and it is bottom up. So Betty cannot submit her organization's planning until Rosanna has submitted hers. So it's, before a particular level can submit their planning, all of their managers below them have to have submitted theirs. So it's very much start from the bottom and go up type of thing is the way the compensation cycle is set up. So if we drill down into I'm going to say no, just got the changes. If we drill down into here, we see, okay, so Rosanna has two direct reports, and one of them is also a manager, Christelle. And again, still no ability to submit. So we're going to go all the way down to Christelle, and we're going to see Christelle has these people and these three people reporting to her. And now we see Christelle isn't dependent on anyone because there's no managers reporting to Christelle. Christelle is at the lowest level of the organization here. So Christelle would need to do her planning first, and she would then submit. And then when she submits, then we can go back up to Rosanna. So one of the things I didn't point out is there's this nice little breadcrumbs that are being drawn for us as we drill down. And so, Christelle reports to Rosanna, who reports to Betty Lockerty. So we're going to go back up to Rosanna. And we're going to see that now Rosanna's submit button is available because Christelle has submitted. You see Christelle's status here has been changed to submitted. Previously, it was calculated. So, okay. And I think that about covers everything I wanted to touch upon as far as the planning page itself. We will circle back to this when we kind of look at the managed cycle transactions page for the comp administrator. It's pretty much set up very similar to this. So now I want to basically second here. Basically start looking at the configuration involved here. So we talked about the prereqs that there's, you need the population, you need the organizational tree, the ratings, merit matrix, bonus plan. So we're going to start taking a look at those. And to make life a little more straightforward for us, so we're not having to sit there and navigate through everything, I've kind of grabbed pages that we're going to go through, put them in favorites in the order that we're going to do them. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the population. And so the comp cycle uses group build functionality, PeopleSoft's group build functionality for driving the population that is in the cycle. And so the group build functionality allows you to define criteria that must be met to include someone in the cycle, but it is somewhat limited as far as its capabilities. What they do allow you to do, however, is base your population off of a query. So you create a query that says, hey, here's, they have to be in this business unit, or they have to be in this group of departments or whatever, and you build your query, and that defines your population. So we're going to take a look at a comp cycle query. So a couple things you need to be aware of if you're going to be utilizing the query capability for group build, to define your population. The first thing you need to be aware of is it needs to be a public query. The next thing you need to be aware of is it has to, the very first record has to be this group build query link view, which is basically a view of job data. And so that has to be your first record, and then you can join in whatever other records you need to define your criteria. There are some limitations as to how your query can be structured. So, they're kind of documented in the people books, in the HCM application fundamentals people book, where it talks about group build. It gets into some of the limitations on that, but basically we can have our criteria, and in this case, I resorted to just, okay, I want these 9 people in here. But normally you would have more things like the HR status has to be active, they're a particular company, maybe they might be in this list of job codes, something like that to identify your population that you're specifically wanting to target to include in this compensation cycle. The other thing to be aware of is that your query can only return these 4 fields. And they have to be from that A record, from that special record. So that's kind of the rules, but this query approach is the one that's used most often with group build because it allows you to utilize whatever tables you need to, including maybe custom tables that you've created, whereas the built-in group build criteria is limited to like 32 tables, and a bunch of them are tables that are like the Mexican version of PERS data, or the Japanese version of PERS data, which probably not applicable to everybody. Um, so basically, we start by putting together our query to come up with who's supposed to be included. Then we go to the group build definition. This is where we would define our group, and here's where we would specify, hey, here's our query. So basically, you just here's the group definition. Here's the other approach to if you weren't using a query. And again, you're limited in the number of records, what record you can use and that type of thing, which is why the query approach is used the most often. And in the group definition over here, I can have it basically, it'll run the group build for us real quick, and it'll give us a count of who's going to be in our, who's going to be in our results. So we will see in just a bit where that will tie into defining our actual comp cycle. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip showing you this part, but basically for each group, you need to have security for that group saying, okay, who's allowed to utilize that group. So there's a page where you would go out there and you would say, who are the, basically who's your comp administrator, because they're the ones that are going to need to utilize that group when they define the compensation cycle. So there's a page where you have to set up the security for the group after you've defined it. So that's kind of the population. Okay, that's kind of the sequence for coming up with your group that's going to be your population that's included in your comp cycle. Then we need the organization. How do those, what's the hierarchy, and how do those folks fit into the hierarchy? And so for that, it basically, the comp cycle uses a tree. And there is a comp tree builder utility that we're going to pull up here and take a quick peek at. And so this will build a tree for you. And it will build it either off of supervisor ID or off of reports to, if you're using position management. So so basically, those are kind of your 2 options as far as utilizing this tree builder utility. You can, in fact, however you want to create a tree, you can, but it's pretty much going to boil down to if you're doing a position-based tree, then everybody's position needs to be represented within that tree. Or if you're doing supervisor ID, then everybody's employee ID and EMPL record number need to be represented in that tree. anybody that is in your population that it can't find in the tree ends up in that comp cycle admin group that when we were looking at the planning page we saw. Now, if you're wanting, if your population's not that large and you're wanting to just have everybody in one, hey, I'm going to have this centrally managed by my comp admin. I've got 500 people that I'm wanting to give an increase to, then you can certainly take advantage of that admin group by just having a tree with one dummy node in it, and it won't find anybody. They'll all end up in the admin group, and then your comp administrator just has to go in and submit for that one comp admin group, and not have to deal with going through and trying to submit for across multiple nodes of the tree of the structure. So, but again, you can utilize Tree Manager to build the tree or rearrange the tree as needed. But basically, it needs to be for comp cycle. It needs to be either position based, position number based, or EMPL ID, EMPL record based. Okay. And so we're going to jump now to defining configurable matrices and take a look at that. So in defining a configurable matrix, there's a couple of things you need to be aware of. This matrix type, okay, there's several different matrix types here. Okay, but base comp is the type that you need for a comp cycle. So your matrix type has to be base comp. Your orientation is always going to be employee level for the comp cycle ones. You have various inputs you can define, but your outputs always have to be the same and in the same order for the comp cycle. What's my funding percent? What's my minimum percentage? And what's my maximum percentage? So funding percent is the amount that the person will potentially get. Minimum percent and maximum percent are providing a range that if a manager is planning and they put something lower than the minimum percent or higher than the maximum percent, it will give them a warning message. It is just a warning, though. It will not stop them. But it'll give them a warning message if they go outside the min-max range on the percent increases. So these are the output fields that your matrix has to have: funding percent, minimum percent, maximum percent. And inputs, you might have different percentages, or you might be doing it differently by business unit or by company. This particular one we did by rating and we did by percentage and range. Okay, so kind of a matrix of, and so if we look at our data content here, actually let's go to view because that'll give us a better look. We can see based on performance rating, based on percentage and range, then these are the funding percent min and maxes. So the suggested range, if you will. So if I'm a rock star, but I'm underpaid, then we're going to suggest a 4% increase, and our range is going to be between 3 and 5. So if they put less than 3, we're going to squawk and say, are you sure you want to do that? Same with if they go greater than 5. So that's the configurable matrix that we set up to drive our percentage increases. And we're going to just briefly touch on variable comp here. And so we've got our bonus plan. In this case, so this is the yeah, I'm gonna go back because this is the first one I set up, which was just an ad hoc one. Basically just ad hoc of who we put people in, what people we put in for increases. Let's look at this one. This is the one that we did with the funding. So so we've got a tree group defining our population. So basically we have another group with a query associated with it, or can be a query associated with it to define our population. Again, I specifically did a subset of the overall population so that we could see that if someone is in the comp cycle population, but they're not in the variable comp population, they will show up as just being excluded from getting a bonus. So basically, we set up our variable comp plan. This gives us the population for the variable comp plan. There's again, don't want to delve too deep into variable comp because it's a whole complicated module on its own. But there's pages then where we can define what our funding is, so what the percentage increase should be, or the percentage bonus amount should be, type of thing. And so set that up. And then that pretty much gets us through kind of all of the prereqs. So now we're to the point where we can actually take a look at, all right, how do we define the compensation cycle itself? So here is our compensation cycle. And basically, we have our cycle ID, we have a description of the cycle, plan type. So plan type says, hey, is this cycle going to use merit and variable comp, or just merit, or just variable comp? So that was something that was more recently added to allow if you just wanted a cycle for variable comp all by itself, type of thing. The funding period, begin and end dates, and period description. Period description is kind of important because it's what the manager will see on that allocate compensation page. Remember the first page we went to where the manager, saw all the different cycles that they need to plan for. Period description is what shows up there. So then we see, here's our group ID that we defined. So this is where we specify our population. Here's the tree that we created. It's default manager role is supervisor ID. So this basically allows you to say, hey, when you build the cycle, I want each person or each manager, if you will, to have access to, automatically provide them access to their particular node. If you don't fill this in, then you have to manually set up access to each branch of the comp cycle tree, which most of the time that's not something you're going to be wanting to do. So we have the currency code. It does so the currency that I'm planning in, it does support currency conversion if you do have populations with multiple currencies. And then here's where we have performance integration. So the performance integration, our sources are either PeopleSoft ePerformance, in which case it's gonna utilize the ratings from your performance documents out of your ePerformance system in PeopleSoft, or the other choice is other. And if you select other, then there is a table. I had it noted in the slide deck. WCS EPA PVR. There's a table basically where you would load in, basically these fields here. You load in the date, begin and end date, the document type, and then the what their person's rating was. So you'd have for each person, for each EMPL ID, you'd have what their rating is. So so that's how you can incorporate if you've got ratings coming from a third party performance system, success factors or whatever, that you can pull the ratings out of that system and load them into the table that PeopleSoft provides, and that way those ratings will get pulled into the comp cycle and can be utilized in the matrix that we saw to drive the percentage increases. So those are kind of the general parameters around the compensation cycle, and then we get into the salary parameters. So with the salary parameters, basically, there's some job change rules. So that's there's a batch job you can run that will look for, has the data changed since I built my comp cycle? And if it has, it'll flag that something's changed. It doesn't update your comp cycle with the revised data. It just flags that, hey, since you built the cycle, since you kind of took the snapshot of your data, something's changed. This person's terminated, or they've got the pay increase, or depending on what type of changes you're wanting to look at, something's changed there, and as a result, it'll flag that. Then we have the eligible rate codes. So what all rate codes, compensation codes are being adjusted with this comp cycle. So if your population is just salaried folks, you maybe just have NA annual. If it's a mixture, you'd have NA annual, NA hourly, or what, if you have to define your own base compensation comp rate codes, you would put these here. The thing to be aware of is that if your population includes people that does not have one of these, whatever rate codes you list here, then it will prevent your compensation cycle from being built. When you go to run the build, it'll kick out an error message and stop the process, basically saying, hey, you've got a person in here that, so if I'd only put NA annual, and somehow when I defined my criteria, I inadvertently included some hourly people in there, it would squawk at that, and it would stop the build process from running because I haven't accounted for everybody in my population. So then as far as the funding is concerned, I can either be using a matrix like what we are doing in this one, and we specify our matrix ID here, or if I wasn't using a matrix, then I would put the percent, minimum, and maximum that applied to everybody in this cycle. And we'll see an example of that so this is the merit, it's using a matrix. When we look at the equity, we're not using a matrix. For the equity, we're just saying, hey, it's 0.5%. And we did the minimum as 0.5 to 5. So this is taking 0.5% of everybody's salaries to come up with that pool of money, that funding that can then be used. Back here on our merit one, we see that it's discretionary, which means that we have the ability on the allocate compensation page to change the amount. It's not a, hey, this is locked in, this is what the amount is. You're allowed to see it, but you're not allowed to touch it. So discretionary checked on allows us to do that, to be able to update it. And we are defaulting our proposal to funded. So in this case, we're looking at the person's rating and their percent and range and coming up with the amount. And so we're defaulting the proposal to what the matrix is coming up with the funding. There is also the ability to do proration. If you're needing to say, well, if they've only been here a portion of the time, then we want to be able to prorate. And then you give your action reason that should be used when you actually post the data to job. On the awards tab, we basically have, we specify what the variable account plan is for our awards, and then is it discretionary, and are we defaulting the proposed from the funded? So there is also rounding rules both for variable comp and for the salary plans. There's rounding rules that you can apply if you want to the nearest dollar or whatever, or round up to the nearest dollar. Self-service is where we specify what is to appear on our planning page. And so basically we can check on these various fields that we want to include on the planning page. Some are on by default, like the change amount. Some we need to turn on. But basically, this is where we can kind of configure what we want to see. So you can see I turned on percent range because that was applicable to our matrix. Also turned on performance rating, again, applicable to how we're coming up with the increase for the person. So we can do those settings for the salary grid, for the awards grid, which is basically for our bonus. We can have different fields that we want to see or not see on there. And then for that individual page that we looked at, the worker details page, where we can turn on some additional information if we want to see, okay, well, what's their grade, what's their comp ratio, and midpoint max of their range, if they're leveraging salary ranges and that. So that's how we configure the cycle. We're running a little short on time here. We're going to take a quick look at administering a cycle, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So, so administering the cycle is where the comp admin, once they've defined the cycle, this is where they would basically be able to control what state the cycle is in. So we see this process flow here. The process flow basically is canceled here. Okay, just so we can see. So we can see that there's the build process. That's an app engine that actually runs and builds our compensation cycle. So it goes out and it gathers up the ratings and it looks at job data and it pulls in that merit matrix and it looks at our tree and all of the pieces that we've talked about, looks at all of that and populates the cycle tables. And so, so basically, it's kind of doing the lion's share of the work there. In terms of pulling all the data together and giving us that snapshot in our comp cycle tables that we then utilize to do our planning.
Yeah.
Then we open the cycle, which basically makes it available to the managers for planning. We can, after planning is done, we can load the cycle, which basically takes the merit increases and loads them back to job data, takes the bonus payments, loads those to payroll to be paid. So that's the load process. And then finally, we close out the cycle. So this guy, the build and the load, are a couple of app engines that are doing, some pretty significant work. The open and the close and the cancel really are just kind of changing the state of the cycle. Open our cycle back up again in case we want to go into it. But that is how the comp administrator would be able to administer the cycle and what state it's in, and making it available, building it and making it available for planning. And so again, I apologize that we ran short on time. Hopefully this gave you a good idea of some of the capabilities that are there with the comp cycle, some of the different options and configurations that you can do. And with that, I'll ask Lisa if we have any questions.
We do not have any questions in the chat just yet. Does anyone have any live questions they would like to ask?
One quick question. If we decided we wanted the whole population in the comp admin group, I know you mentioned the number of 500. Is there a limitation where the group would be too big to handle that way?
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you what I saw. Now, so first off, keep in mind that that comp cycle page we were looking at, pop back over there. Actually, I go into the managed cycle transactions one to just to give you a glimpse of that. It's very similar. So this grid here of the planning grid, everybody has to get loaded in there. So everybody that's in a group, so if we were in the comp admin group, everybody would get loaded into this grid right here. So so part of it is dependent on, obviously your particular environment and the performance of your particular environment. But basically what we were seeing in one of my clients was we could get about 1,500 was really the limit. And then it was just taking way too long to load, and it was really slow, just trying to navigate through it, and that type of thing. So again, kind of environment dependent, but keep in mind everything has to get loaded. All the people would get loaded into this one grid there. So if your population was 1,000 or less, probably pretty safe to do. But when you get into above 1,000 up to 1,500 or whatever, it's getting a little more risky. Then you're probably going to want to break it down into chunks. One of the things, I'm sorry, are there any other questions? Did I answer your question, Karen?
You did. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Other questions? One of the things that I forgot to mention is, so what are some of the common customizations that we see? So first and foremost is, we were looking here at the planning, the merit planning, and the bonus in that. And there are a lot of companies that will do a lump sum in lieu of a merit. So for example, if I'm above my range, I'm maybe not going to get a base pay increase, but I'm going to get a lump sum amount. Well, that can be handled. You could handle that utilizing the bonus payment capability. The downside to that is that you don't see one pot of money, because a lot of times it's like, okay, I've got this amount of money. This is my budget for doing merit increases, and that includes any lump sums we're doing in lieu of merit increases. And so, if you have that situation, you could consider customizing. I've seen that kind of the most common customization I've seen is adding a lump sum amount field to the system, so that can be planned for and incorporated in the spend against the merit budget. Any other questions?
I don't see anything else in the chat, Jim. And just as a reminder, I will go out and just send out the recording of this webinar to everyone, to all of the attendees, so that I would say by the end of the day, look for it in your inbox. And if you have any questions, again, you can feel free to reach out to me. My name is Lisa Kovac. The email would have, for the invitation to this, would have come out to you or Jim as well. And any other questions, anything you would like clarification on, please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to get back with you. Thanks so much, Jim.
Yes, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Hopefully you found this helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.